Today, we welcomed back Alix Myers, who is a doula, educator, and founder of Tenderly, which is a support practice focused on pregnancy, birth, and postpartum care for neurodivergent families, which is what the topic of today's episode was. Neurodivergent families, really having Alix help them with their birth and postpartum plans and just bringing awareness to helping those who are going through such a time that is already so changing and intense and all of this stuff, and really just opening up everybody's eyes and how they can help neurodivergent people really have a beautiful experience with childbirth.
What I'm, without sounding like, I don't want to sound like I am somebody who's not aware and not interested, but this is something that I have not heard of a lot, but really recently I've heard it a lot more. I've heard about it a lot more often, and I'm kind of like embarrassed that I really didn't think about it before. But unless you're presented with something, people really just don't maybe think about stuff like that. But it's such an interesting subject. And I think it's so empowering for people because there's so many people that have exceptional different ways of processing things in their life. And when you're going through something like childbirth or the childbearing process, it's such a special time. And I think that we really need to make it the best possible experience because it's such it's a miracle to bring life. It's a kind of miracle to bring to birth a child, to make a baby. And the whole process is really, it's beautiful, and it's not beautiful for everyone. So having these kinds of conversations is really encouraging for me personally, and I'm sure for many people, to bring light to the exceptions and people that are not, what our society or our culture depicts as in the normal box. So, and I'm not saying by any stretch of imagination that it's not normal, not at all. What I'm saying is that we need to normalize all the exceptions and make sure that people are experiencing things to the best of their ability.
Yeah, and I also want to thank Alix for just being so open and helping those families who are trying to have a baby. The way she speaks, and she's very warm and a place where you feel really safe when you're speaking with her, even if we're just recording this episode with her. It's a safe space for even for us to just have these conversations, not to feel judged and all of this. So really, she's just an amazing person, and what she's doing is so great. We've had her on
she's
before.
so inclusive. Have you noticed
So
her
inclusive.
language is very inclusive.
Yeah, and just I know that we're going to have her back on again with different topics that for example, neurodivergent people and childbirth, and how we didn't really know a lot about it. And I'm excited for what we're going to have, what conversations we'll have with her in the future with other things that she's going to bring into her portfolio. She's really, really cool. So overall, just such a great episode, really eye-opening and
very encouraging.
We loved it. Yeah, we loved it.
Very encouraging. So. I think we're on, when we have these types of conversations, it makes us realize that we're on the path of evolving as humans even more. So I think it's really special, and conversations are always fun. So welcome to the podcast, Alix.
Alix, welcome back to our podcast. We're so happy to have you back on a second time. I know that our first time that we ended up speaking with you, we kind of touched on everything breastfeeding, chest feeding, pregnancy, postpartum, everything that you do at Tenderly. But today we're really going to focus on what pregnancy, birth, and postpartum can look like for neurodivergent people.
Yeah.
That being said, before we get into that, what does that mean, neurodivergent people?
Sure.
Just for those listening who can understand
yes.
this.
So neurodivergence, neurodiversity, it's like new language that we've never had before. And we need it, because what neurodivergence means is it talks about the diversity in terms of our brain profiles. So mostly when we're talking about it, they're referring to things like autism, ADHD, OCD, anxiety, anything that makes our brains process things differently. And it's not like these are problems that we're trying to fix. It's more of a beautiful representation of just, as human beings, all parts of our bodies are different, right? And we look different, we feel different, and our brains are different. So it's almost like an empowering term to bring together to bring together this community of people who's who go through the world differently, who feel the world differently, and process things differently.
So this also means like it can be those who have like different learning capabilities like dyslexia. It's
Mhm.
how you like can process information, not
Yes.
just behavior, right? Like it's just
Not just behavior at all. Yes, such a good clarification. Not just behavior at all. Um, so most of the time, there's a comorbidity, the sorry, comorbidity of of things. So I think the stats, and don't, if somebody has the exact stats, please let us know. But if you have ADHD or you are ADHD, there's different ways of like talking about your neurodivergence. But if you have ADHD, the chances that you are autistic, it's like 20 to 50%. If you are autistic, the chances that you also have an ADHD brain is like 70%. So these things go hand in hand. Often when you talk to somebody who is neurodivergent, they're like, yes, I'm autistic, I have ADHD, and I have dyspraxia, which is something with, it's the connection between your brain and your hands. So there's often like a whole rainbow of neurodivergence that comes together to make up different brain profiles.
interesting.
Very interesting.
It's so interesting.
I've never heard of it before. Honestly, I've never
Yes.
heard of it before. So I'm really looking forward to learning everything more about that and how it is intertwined
Yes.
into what you do and pregnancy ultimately,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, if you are neurodivergent, everything you do is different, right? Just how you go through the world, how you eat breakfast, how you wake up in the morning, everything is different because your brain is it's wired differently. So when we talk about things like pregnancy, birth, postpartum, these are massive transitions in your life.
Yeah.
And so if your brain already processes the world differently, now we're putting an extraordinary amount of stress, transition, change, sensory into the situation. Of course, it's going to feel and look different. And, historically, nobody's talking about this. And what happens when we've talked about this when we had our last conversation, when we do not bring to light the information, then people are isolated. I mean, we'll talk about the risks for neurodivergent people in terms of postpartum mood disorders, but like they're so high. And our systems just aren't built to support neurodivergent people. And that's wrong. We got to change that.
Yeah. Definitely. Like that's
100%.
something that
100%.
definitely
I find we just, as a society, we bulk everybody into the same bucket and we don't look at the exceptions that much, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's
I
like just
mean,
not a lot of solutions and like it's just like not necessarily fair in that way, like to make such a beautiful transition like very peaceful for everybody is so important.
mhm. It's what's amazing about humankind is how different we all are.
Yeah.
And then what's incredible is when we look at the brains of the people who are like moving forward science and art and music, all of these people, are neurodivergent. It's because they think differently that our society moves in the way, but yet our systems are not built, right? Like the medical system is not built so that nurses and doctors and healthcare providers are not being trained to identify neurodivergence, to accommodate neurodivergence. If we look at school systems, right, they're built for neurotypical kids and they work for some kids, but they don't work for other kids.
Yeah.
So, but the thing is that I'm just thinking about how many people do you think, if you look at a population, how many
Yeah.
people do you think are neurodivergent? Because I think it's quite high, actually, right?
So here's my answer. I don't know.
Okay.
And the reason I don't know is because, first of all, there's not a lot of research. And the research that there is, there's not a lot of research around women for sure. And
Absolutely.
then,
That that's incredible.
and also, there's such an occurrence of underdiagnosis that we don't know. We're not sure. But what's happening, which is wonderful, is that people are starting to identify the um, the characteristics in themselves.
Yeah.
So this, and again, because there's not a lot of research, it's really hard for me to give you statistics. But that being said, anecdotally, from lived experience, what's happening a lot is in the parent world, people are identifying their own neurodivergence as they start learning about their own kids. So what's great is now there is a lot more identification through the school system, and there are people that are in place, OTs, psychologists in the school systems that are like noting things with the kids. And then as you learn, they're like, okay, my kid has this neurodivergent. Wait a second, this is a genetic thing. This feels like how I felt when I was going through school, when I was growing up. And then you start saying, hey, this actually sounds like my brain. And there's just so many cases of parents, of mothers who are learning about their kids and then learning about themselves. And so the occurrence of diagnosis is going up amongst this age group. And there's a lot of conversation, and it's a bit political. We don't need to get political about the fact that, like, oh, everybody's autistic now, and oh, everybody has ADHD. It's not true. Not everybody has ADHD, and not everybody is autistic. But like, I'm celebrating the fact that more people are owning this language, this diagnosis, this title, this whatever you want to call it, because it means that there are more people out there that can create systems in place and accommodations for neurodivergent people. I think it's wonderful.
Crazy. So,
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too.
that being said, I want to know, like, what are some challenges that neurodivergent people go through when they are going through pregnancy during, like, in our regular healthcare system? Like, what are
Yes.
some of the challenges they see, and, like, I guess what are some challenges, but like what are some, I don't want to use the word triggers because it's like not really triggers, but something
I
that
think
could
challenges is fair. I think
challenges. Yeah,
challenges is the
exactly.
right language. And I just want to say, like, I'm not going to use all the perfect language. I can't speak for everybody.
Yeah, of course.
We're going to do our best and know that we're like trying to be as neuro affirming as possible in the way that we talk about this. So I try and keep a framework in mind when I look at any experience. So let's use pregnancy as an example. The first piece of my framework is sensory. So, whether you are autistic, ADHD, PDA, OCD, most neurodivergence comes with some sensory sensitivity. And when you think about being pregnant, you think about, first of all, your body is changing. And when we neurodivergent people lose control of our body, like that can feel really yuck. Some people are like, oh, I can feel my baby moving and it's so exciting and I love it. But some neurodivergent people are like, oh, this is something inside of my body that I don't have control over and it's moving constantly. And that can be a really negative feeling.
Yeah.
The idea that your skin is stretching, like if you're really sensitive, you can feel that. There's actually, unfortunately, there's something called hyperemesis, and it's basically extreme nausea. Like this is not like morning sickness. This is constant sickness, vomiting all day, every day. It's
My
extreme.
sister had
You're,
that. My sister had it. One of my
yes.
sisters.
So you are often hospitalized. It's awful.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
for some reason, there's a much higher chance of having it when you're neurodivergent. Like you can only imagine if you have sensory sensitivities, how uncomfortable, how out of control your body feels. Things like sound and light. So that's especially in birth. If you're in the hospital situation, right? The noises, the beeping of the monitor, the lights that they put on you, the touch. People are touching you constantly when you're giving birth.
Poking and prodding and everything. All
Right.
of it.
Right. So that's like
Already
huge.
discussing that.
So the sensory piece. And then when you look at postpartum, the sensory piece, you're touched out. You are being touched all day by a little person, by other people. Your breasts, if you have breasts, can feel absolutely not your own. They're painful or heavy or different. The feeling of let down, which is really hard to explain if you've never felt it, but it can be, there's really a range of how intense you can feel it. And if you're already someone with a lot of sensory processing sensitivities, like that can be massive, and it's happening many times a day. And there's not much else you can do about it. It's not like, other than stopping to nurse, which you may not want, that might not be in your value system, there's nothing you can do about it, and it can feel terrible. So if you think about all of your senses, everything is like really so intense in this period that like my first thing I always think about is like, what, or questions I ask my clients is, what are your sensory sensitivities? Like, what should we be aware of in advance so that we can try and lessen that feeling or prepare you in a better way so you know what's coming.
Or like have tools to be able to work through it.
Yes,
You know, we
absolutely.
just had a conversation with somebody about the nervous system and the nervous system being on overdrive and stuff like that,
Yes,
and how to regulate it by through breath and stuff like that.
yes,
And I think that if you are, I mean, I don't know because I don't have uh, sensorial things. Unless
yes.
it's got to do with somebody eating and chewing, that will throw me to another area.
That's real.
But
No, I
but
know it's because I suffer from it too.
Yes, yes, that
there's
is
like
a
a
sensory
term,
sense.
I think. But if you are that type of a person and you're experiencing these uncomfortable moments,
Yeah.
new mother or a pregnant mother, woman, there's probably a lot of things that you can do to help you to cope and work through those things through regulating the nervous system and,
Yes.
you know, how we
Well,
think and how we breathe. Yeah.
this whole thing is about the nervous system.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it becomes a nervous system disability. So feeling safe in your nervous system, like that's my like umbrella, right? And everything we do, every way I try and support and prepare my clients is so that in these moments where there is some lack of control, right? We don't really know how it's going to go. We try and put into place these systems to protect their nervous system. So I think that's like a beautiful connection because when your nervous system is safe, your capacity is larger. When you're in fight or flight, you're shutting down, right? Like you just don't have the capacity to take on more. So like that brings me into one of my like next points of my like little framework is first of all trauma. So because when you have trauma and you are triggered, you're right, you're in fight or flight, right? And that
Or
could look
freeze.
like
And you
shutting
have now fight, flight, or
fight,
freeze.
flight, or yes.
Yeah, it's
Um,
intense.
so if you've had, and most people who are neurodivergent have had some sort of, like the medical system is real hard. Walking into a hospital is loud, it's overwhelming, there's a lack of control. If you have PDA, which we can talk about, um, like the demand is just so high on you when you're in a medical system. So right away, like if you have any kind of hospital or medical or doctor trauma, walking in and having a birth like that is, you're in fight or flight for the whole time. And what happens is you start masking, and masking is something that we all do. We're all doing it. I'm doing it right now, right? We're like, we're having this conversation. I'm not, I am performing in this situation and I am masking, but there is a level of masking that is okay. And then there's a level which is too far. And then what
What do you mean
happens,
by masking? What do you mean by masking?
what I mean by masking is, I want to make sure I'm like very clear in the way I say it, but it's, I am masking my own discomfort so that I can be in this social situation.
I understand. Okay.
Okay. So as you go through the day, you're in meetings, we all do a little bit of it.
Yeah.
A lot of neurodivergent people do a lot of it, and it is exhausting.
Yeah.
And because they're masking, so let's say they walk in, they're already triggered by their trauma. Now they're masking to a huge degree while giving birth. And this idea of like, we can talk about pain, right? If you are masking your pain, then as your healthcare provider, I'm not treating you accurately. So if I can't see how much pain you're in, or if you're masking so much you can't see how much
you don't
pain
even
you're
know
in,
yourself.
then we're jeopardizing everybody's health here.
I am loving Jan Marini's Luminate Eye Gel. I've been using it for months and it's my favorite product for tackling dark circles, puffiness, and crepiness. It's packed with retinol power, but gentle enough for everyone. And if you're dealing with milia, its gentle formula hydrates without being too rich. You apply it under eyes only and never on the lids. And remember, as with most retinols, there's an acclimation period. So start slowly, like 2 to 3 nights per week, and then gradually increase to every night. I promise you won't be disappointed. If you want to try this product, go to bskinenvie.ca. That's bskinenvie.ca and use code SKINTALKS to get 10% off your first order. You're also not only just jeopardizing health, but you're also stepping outside of the experience of childbirth, which should be experienced, right? And
Right.
to a certain
Oh, yeah.
degree, even though it's, it's painful, it's all this stuff and not always easy for anybody. But
Yes.
when you go through that, to be present in your body while you're going through it instead of separating out as like witnessing yourself going through it and not,
Right.
because there's a certain element of not enjoyment, but in a way, it's an experience that is life-changing.
Yes. Yes. And we want to be present, but
Yeah.
if you've spent so much time over your life learning that you have to mask in order to be accepted, then it's often your go-to response to stress. And again, it can be dangerous because if we're not being true, when I tell clients, listen, if you're in labor and you tell me, Alix, I'm in labor and I want to be at the hospital and I feel like something is happening, I'm going to say to you, be loud. Because those nurses are listening to how much pain you're in. That's how, like, this isn't like a perfect system, but it is what's happening. If you are loud, they're going to admit you because that's how they're judging, like, how far along you are and how much pain you can tolerate. But if you are a neurodivergent person who is masking your pain, you're not going to get the same um, you're not going to get the same treatment as somebody who is maybe neurotypical and is screaming because they are feeling their pain in a different way. So that's a really big piece of it. And that carries over into postpartum. If you're masking and I can't tell, or your partner or your family members can't tell that you are struggling, you are not okay, then we have a communication barrier here. We can't help you.
I think it's so wonderful that this is coming to light because so many people, I mean, if you look historically speaking, have been ashamed or not
Yes.
feeling that they could even express this stuff that
Yeah.
is going on with them. It's like this silence culture of,
Mhm.
you're supposed to, as a woman, our kind of role in society is to reproduce in a weird way, and you're supposed to be okay with it, comfortable with it. It's a woman's thing to do. You're supposed to
Yeah,
naturally
that's what it is.
you're supposed to
It is what it
naturally
is.
fall into the position of motherhood. You're supposed to naturally give birth and not have it traumatize you.
Yeah.
And it's all false. It's literally false. It's
Yeah.
not. And
Yeah.
everybody's very unique and individual in this process, and everybody experiences things a different way. And if you're in
Yeah.
any way, like you said, not the norm,
Neurotypical.
but they continue to be like in that bucket, then you really can suffer enormously.
Yeah. Yeah. And the trauma is real and it affects your attachment after, right?
Yeah.
That's the other piece is if any of the process of getting pregnant, we haven't even talked about fertility, but getting pregnant and being pregnant and then giving birth, if there's any trauma in that, if there's any discomfort, it affects your attachment. And like the expectation is instant connection. That's not real. Like, it's just not. I
Yeah.
mean, after you give birth, you've got like this whoosh of hormones and then like a lowering of hormones. And sometimes you can feel like immediately attached, and that's lovely. But for a lot of people, you feel disconnected to your own body. And if you're disconnected to your own body, how are you supposed to feel connected to this new body that you don't even know?
Yeah.
So I think you're so right. We need to be talking about it more
Mm-hmm.
because we need to normalize that these feelings of discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to really talk about like what is realistic for all people and specifically for neurodivergent people. Like there are different ways to prepare. Preparation for me is like a non-negotiable for anyone having a baby, but especially if you're neurodivergent, because you need all of these extra tools and special tools that look different, and they should be in place to support you because
Yeah.
we don't want this society of postpartum people and birthers who mentally are just so unwell. It's not good for us. It's not good for our relationships and our family systems, and it's not good for our children.
Yeah. Crazy.
Right. Also, but especially for the children, because the child also goes through birthing for a child is not an easy process either, right? There's a lot of, you start your life almost in a traumatic state just to begin with, right? Coming into this world, I can't imagine that for a baby being born, that it's an easy process for the baby either, right? It's got to
No.
have some pain associated. You get stuck, you know, like there's all these things that are going on. And then not to have the attachment with your parent or your birthing parent or partner, it's hard for a baby too. It's the way we start off.
Absolutely. And when I say I support neurodivergent families, I don't mean I only support families where the birther is neurodivergent. I also support families where the partner is neurodivergent, or, and this is like really common, is there's a sibling in the house that's neurodivergent. And
Oh,
like
interesting.
that's like a whole different ballgame, right? Because this is a transition, a massive transition in their life that they did not ask for. They might be young and not have all the tools in place.
Or
As
understand.
their parents, you are just learning those tools. And like, what does that look like? There's so many videos on Instagram, right? Of like little toddlers meeting their baby sibling. And it's like, oh, I love them. They're so beautiful. But that's not what happens if you have a neurodivergent kid, they're not gonna be immediately attached. It's just, that's not what it looks
Might be
like.
really unhappy actually because their
Yeah,
world just shifted and like this new little creature comes into their space and now
of
it's
Losing
course.
no
all of like
dependent.
mommy and daddy's time or whoever, like
Yeah,
their
Hmm.
life is
yeah.
shifted completely from literally one day to the next.
Yeah. It
I
it's
love the fact
it
that
is.
these things are talked about though now today. Like I just think that this is really good
Yeah.
to have this awareness around all of this so that people don't feel isolated and know that there's people out there that can help them
Yeah.
through these very life-changing experiences, you know?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think it's very cool. I'm obsessed with learning about this and different brain profiles. And
Mhm.
I mean, the other thing is there's actually concrete ways of helping yourself and your partner, and like that feels so empowering and magical and wonderful that like yes, we can identify that there's definitely problems within the system. We can identify that like there's gaps in the knowledge of our healthcare workers, and at the same time there are things you can do or I can help you do, to set yourself up for more success,
Yeah.
and like that feels super cool.
Um, I know that this is probably different for every family or everybody, like, but what is it like? I know that you said before, like, you asked their sensory, like, what does a birth plan look like? Let's say, like, really kind of like simplify it because I know obviously it's different for every
Right.
single person that's going through this, especially
Right.
when there's like, let's say ADHD is maybe different from autism, is different from PDA, like,
Yeah.
but just so that like we can understand, I guess, how tenderly, like how you at tenderly would work, and like
Yeah.
if somebody's maybe listening who is planning on getting pregnant, who is neurodivergent, like what they can expect at a very easy
Yeah.
level.
Okay, so anybody that comes to me, but specifically a neurodivergent family. So the first thing I like to do is I do a birth planning session. It's 2 hours. We are sitting for 2 hours and we are talking about everything that could come up in your birth and all of the things that are priorities and of value to you. So in a, let's say a standard birth plan, it would be like, do I want an epidural? And what kind of pain meds do I want? And so it's more as a tool that you kind of like communicate, here's what I do want, here's what I don't want.
Yes.
With my birth plan, it's yes, I have all those things. We'll talk about like every pain medication, what it does to you, how the physicality, the sensory feels. But it's also a tool for education for the healthcare workers. So whether that's the nurse, the doctor,
Right.
the midwife, whoever is helping you. And it's things like when I'm stressed, I A, get very verbal, B, shut down and go very quiet,
Yeah.
C, right? Like, so because not only is this about like, these are the choices I've made for my body, but also like, I need you to know these things because if I stop talking, something's not right. And I may not have the ability, the capacity to say that for myself. Now, listen, if I am your doula, I am going to know this about you and I'm going to help advocate for you. But if I'm not there and your partner, listen, neurodivergent people, we really like other neurodivergent people. And sometimes your partner also doesn't have that ability to advocate
Yeah.
in these very like intense, stressful situations. So the birth plan acts as this like, here is an introduction to my brain and these are the things I need. And it could be as like specific to when I'm pushing, don't keep saying push harder. I just had this with a client. The nurse kept saying, push harder. And push harder to me, if I have RDS, which is rejection sensitivity disorder, if I have that, then you're telling me to push harder. That feels like to me, like I'm not doing a good job.
Yeah.
If you keep telling me that, and I'm trying to do this really, really hard thing, I'm going to lose motivation and start to shut down. So I need positive reinforcement. You're doing great. This is awesome. Keep going exactly how you're doing it. That's how I need you to continue. And that shift in language is so powerful because it's like the difference between like locking down my brain and opening it up.
Mhm.
So we talk about like what kind of language encourages you when you feel stressed, when your nervous system is triggered. What is it that helps you feel calm? Is it soft, calm music? So we need to write that goes on your birth plan. Is it absolute silence? That goes on your birth plan. Is it some people are like sensory seeking? Is it loud music? Like, do you need to listen to Rage Against the Machine when you're feeling stressed in your birth? Okay, cool. Let's do that.
That would
Maybe
be
you're going to wear
wild. Like
headphones because
screamo in the
that's going
birth
to trigger
room.
me.
Like I would love to see that.
Like those specific details that wouldn't necessarily show up on a birth like a standard birth plan. Those
Yeah.
are the types of things that we're talking about and that we're putting on there. I think also because we're not there yet, it's a lot of education. So autism is an ever evolving language and we are learning more and more each day.
Mhm.
So if I put that I am autistic on my birth plan, like I want more information about that so that as a nurse, which I'm not, but let's say I am a nurse, like I need to know more than just that. So I'm
Yeah.
going to use PDA as a really good example because PDA is something that is very new. Nobody knows about it. It's very rare to know about it.
Could you say what
Yeah, yeah.
what is it actually?
So it's PDA is about demand. So it's pervasive demand avoidance. I, I could spend an hour explaining it to you. It's quite nuanced, but we're seeing that it's actually more and more common. And what it means is that the daily demands that you or I experience that don't even phase me. Like it does not phase me. If you ask me to pick something up off the floor, that phase me, that I don't even think about it, right? If you have PDA, that will ignite your nervous system. It is a nervous system disability. So if I have a birther or a partner that is PDA, I need to be coming into with my birth plan with an explanation of what that is. If I'm going to say dyspraxia, dyspraxia is like how your brain connects to your hands, and that's a really terrible explanation of it. But so that means that if you're asking me to do something with my hands or the IVs or right, that's going to affect me in a different way. I need to come in with an explanation in my birth plan of what dyspraxia is and how it affects me. So it's actually the birth plan for a neurodivergent person. If you're coming to me, like from Tenderly, if I am a neuroaffirming doula, is going to look very different than if you are neurotypical and you're just looking for a standard birth plan.
Right.
If that answers your question.
Yeah, totally.
It does. And I just wonder, but you're talking about nervous system, but is that something that people have, or is it because of their lifestyle and the way that they breathe and the way that they sleep and all of that, that they have a dysregulated nervous system?
So
I guess the diagnosis.
listen, there's so many different theories on this.
Yeah.
I believe that it is the way your brain is wired.
Yeah, it's close. Yeah.
I think that there are a lot of people out there with differing opinions. I believe that if you are PDA, right now it is thought of as a profile in autism, in the autism spectrum, like ASD. Some people think it is outside of that, but that is how you are born and wired. Are there environmental things that could trigger like crises or burnouts? Absolutely.
Right. It could make it worse, right? All the symptoms and everything.
Or it could bring it up potentially.
Sure. And like you can be flared and whether or not you have a nervous system disability, like you can be in a good moment or you can be in a harder moment. And the things around you tend to contribute to that.
Right.
The more understanding you have of your own body and your own nervous system is obviously going to help you create space for yourself that puts you in a better place.
Yeah.
But I believe that it is the way you are wired, how you were born, how your brain is built.
Yeah. Wow, that's pretty intense.
Yeah,
But I mean, I think even just having this conversation is very new for Beata and I. And I think that that's the purpose of this episode or this podcast, is always to bring attention to things and like hopefully help somebody, like at least one person who's out there who's listening or knows somebody and then shares it and then this and that. But I think that's so important to bring light to conversations like this, because it's not it shouldn't be unnormal. It should be normal. It should be a part of like everyday practice, because more and more people are discovering and like have diagnoses later in their life, right?
Yeah.
So it should be more talked about, which I think is
They
great.
feel different along their life, but nobody really knows why. And then you put them into circumstances that are, pregnancy and childbirth is a massive circumstance. And then, after childbirth and all that, if you're already struggling in your life and then you throw this into the mixture because it's life, a way to navigate it and to have tools and support. It must be just absolutely incredible for people that struggle with these.
Yeah.
I don't want to say conditions, because I think it's just being human in a lot of respects. We are just humans and we're all very, very different, but we're, through our social systems and culture, are expected to all be the same kind of, in a way, right? And I think already
that's changing now, though, which is good.
It is more and more, which is very promising, and very encouraging to know that there are people out there that can help people like this, and just bringing awareness. I think awareness is the number one thing. And if somebody's listening to this and said, okay, you've sparked something in me where maybe I have this, and I can implement things in my life before pregnancy, even. Before being a parent, or even if you decide never to have children, which is entirely fine too. Like, it's totally normal, that you can just know that there are ways that you can navigate through your life, implementing technique and reaching for support that can help you to manage it differently, to live a more, in a way, it's a joyous life, and to be able to find joy in life and harmony in your life and homeostasis and everything, which is so dysregulated already as it stands right now with what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
And imagine people that are, you know, women and their partners who are bringing children into the world during a pandemic, for example, and now during all of these, you know, different situations that are happening in our world that are creating, I think, a lot of chaos for people. To bring children into the world at this time also just on its own is already a question, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Already
there was
something.
there was just this like uh this thing going around the internet about how if you had a baby in the at the beginning of the pandemic, that baby is 5 now. And like we're just starting to process what that all meant for us. I mean, I was pregnant during the pandemic. I had a baby, she's 4 now, and like it was something else. Um and yeah, we're just starting to unpack what that did to our nervous systems, and we're just starting to
Giving
unpack
birth
like
alone. People gave birth alone
yeah. Listen,
with
I
masks
I think
on.
they had changed it like 2 weeks before I gave birth that my partner could come with me. And this was my third, so I'd already done it. So I was thinking, and I was training to be a doula at that time, and I was thinking, like, could I do this alone? Maybe I could because I've already done it twice, and like maybe I have like a little bit more. I know I'm able to advocate for myself, kind of, and I'm really grateful that I didn't have to go in there alone, but I was wearing a mask the whole time.
I have been using the SkinCeuticals PTOX for a couple of weeks now, and I have to say I'm obsessed. This product is a needle-free anti-wrinkle peptide serum that visibly reduces 9 types of expression lines and reveals glass skin radiance. It's a great product to start using when you're not quite ready for injections, or like me, it's the perfect complementary product to use in conjunction with my Botox sessions to maximize wrinkle correction. I even have a couple of friends who have been using the product and have noticed change in their skin texture and any deep wrinkles they may have. You have to try it. Trust me on this. If you want to try the product, go to bskinenvie.ca. That's BSKINENVIE.ca and use code SkinTalks to get 10% off your next order.
Even just giving birth with a mask on
Yeah, you're pushing
alone.
with a mask on. At a certain point, I can tell you that I ripped that mask off and I said a lot of bad words, and I was like, I'm not wearing this anymore.
As you
But
should.
I did most
It's
of it with the mask
it's
on.
hideous. The whole
Yeah.
thing is hideous. So I'm sure for a first time mother, I mean, we all know that we can do things alone. I think everybody must know that they can do things alone because a lot of us have had to. And you know, we live in Canada, so we're lucky where we live there, but there's areas of the world that people don't have anybody and they're bringing, you know, babies into the world alone with no proper medical system even. So we can get through stuff. But these are life-changing events that happen to us that we
We shouldn't have
we're
to do.
lucky to be able to make it as you know, pleasant as possible and as
Yeah.
memorable as possible and with the best possible outcome for
Right.
ourselves, you know, and
Yeah.
our partners and the child, obviously. Yeah, no, this is very interesting. It's not something I've ever even honestly, and maybe, and I think I'm somebody who thinks about a lot of things, but I never really even considered it. It's not something that ever came across my brain that it even exists. So I find it very interesting and hopeful for
Yeah.
people who do have these exceptions, you know?
I think that well, now you're going to start seeing it everywhere just because of the
Just
world
because
and
of
the internet.
consciousness.
It's going to be all over your feed and algorithm.
Yeah.
But it is learning more about the differences between us, I think is fascinating. And like, I know that you both have done so much to bring light to conversations that are not talked about enough. But I mean, you own a spa, right? And so, and I'm really lucky. I'm going to the spa today. I'm going to have a massage today. But it's the process of like, okay, when I arrive at that spa, like even that system, right, is I know is going to start to shift and change to be more accommodating. Like the sounds in the spa, the smells in the spa, like how would that affect someone that has a sensory processing disorder? And all of those little things that we take for granted will feel good to everybody. It just doesn't feel good to everybody. And I think like that's the most interesting part of my this specialty in my practice is that I'm forced to reconsider everything that I was taught to make someone feel comfortable, because some people, touch is awful. But, often we're told in birth, in labor, touch feels good. Or just like even when we talk about like the postpartum period where when you are overwhelmed and stressed and are like, let's come up with a structure and a schedule and a system that's going to help you. If you're a neurodivergent person, sometimes a schedule feels great and sometimes it is the worst. And so, like, we talk about things like habit stacking and what are different ways to make you feel safe, to make your nervous system feel safe when you are overloaded and your basic needs are not being met, when you're not sleeping, when you're not eating the same way, when you're not drinking water. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's so interesting and so exciting for me to, and then for my own self-discovery, like it's been incredible and so impactful to look back on my own experience and lived experience, through pregnancies, through loss, through birth and postpartum. It's just, yeah, it's empowering.
For
Of
sure.
course it is.
100%.
Yeah. No,
It
very,
really
very
is.
interesting.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. And I'm sure for you, a very rewarding type of profession that you've found yourself in, to be able to help people this way. It's wonderful. It's
Yeah.
wonderful.
And I
Is there
think also
anything?
adapting to like the changes is also something that you're like obviously very good at. And I think that's so important, not to be stagnant, to like open up different scenarios and experiences that your clients have, I think is really like very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is there
Today's
anything
been
that we
amazing.
didn't cover about this? Because I think we kind of touched on everything. Is there anything that
Yeah.
you need to mention
I mean,
still?
I would actually I'm interested because we spoke about the birth plan a little bit, and
Yeah.
you just touched on the postpartum plan,
Yeah.
but I'm interested um a little bit if like you can dive into that because you said
Yeah.
structures, schedules, but like I'm sure it looks really different for a lot of people.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, I just want to think about how I want to frame it. But so in the same way that I do a 2-hour sit down
Yeah.
birth plan, which most doulas are going to do some sort of birth planning with you. It is a non-negotiable for me that we also sit down and do a 2-hour postpartum plan. And especially in that one, your partner, whoever that may be, your support system has to be in that meeting too.
Yeah, for sure.
Because here's the things that we need to go over. We need to renegotiate your system. So who's doing the dishes, who's doing the cooking, who's doing the cleaning? Like, yes, but more so is who is going to take care of the person that just gave birth, and who's going to take care of the baby, and who's going to take care of the partner. So we create like a structure of support where it's like, okay, I know my mother-in-law is really great at this, so that is going to be her job. I know that the social battery for someone who's neurodivergent might be a lot smaller than somebody who is neurotypical. And so, who's going to be the bouncer? Because that's what happens is you need a boundary bouncer when you've just given birth. People really want to see that baby and people want to be part of it and people want to
Yeah.
be in the mix. And if that doesn't feel good to you and your family, like who's going to hold that line for you? So like we really talk about those things. We also plan for that time period. One of the exercises I do with my clients is I want to know what you like to eat. What is your favorite coffee order? What is your favorite salad place? And exactly what do you like on your salad? I want to know like everything you like to eat. And I make a thing and you put it on your fridge and your door, and it removes the extra load of having to communicate your needs. Because if I am your mother-in-law, mother, aunt, best friend, I'm not going to be asking you, what can I do for you? What do you want to eat tonight? Can I order you some food? What would you want? I'm not asking you that because I know I have that tool in place. So we come up with a bunch of things like that. There's another one where it's like, what is your partner must have? If they need to run every day for 30 minutes so that their brain is functioning, then we're going to make up a system where they get to run that 30 minutes. Because if they're good, then you're going to be better taken care of.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
and then all of this is mapped out, written out, put on the fridge or wherever feels good to you so that you don't have to start doing this. Hey, you know what? I just realized I haven't run in a week and I'm not functioning, because that's already built into your plan.
Yeah.
That takes away the guesswork, right? And
All
it
of it.
just,
Yeah.
it's like really, really solid, good communication.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
We
like
talk
ultimately
about,
what this is a massive amount of communication and like understanding personal needs.
yeah. And if you haven't slept, you can't have those conversations. I'm sorry.
No.
You're just not, you can't advocate for yourself. Everything's going to trigger you. You can't have it after. We've got to have those conversations
Yeah.
before.
Is this like a conversation you have at like 6 months, or is it something you have at like also like right after your birth plan? Or is this like when do you
So
like what
Done in
in the
advance, right?
at what stage? Yeah.
yeah.
So normally I have the birth planning conversation between like 30 and 32 weeks when you're pregnant. And then it could be right after. It doesn't even really matter. It just has to be in advance, that we have that postpartum conversation. Because the other thing is, like, if you need, not everybody has a huge family or support system. Sometimes we need to hire help. And we need time to find that help. So I want to make sure that I give enough like buffer time, that if we identify you need to hire some help to come into your house for whatever the role might be, could be just to fold your laundry, right? Like, we need to enough time to find that help.
Yeah.
If you are local, I often have contacts of people that can come in and do that, but I have clients everywhere. So it's like, what tools do I need to use to find that support,
Yeah.
to find that help?
Yeah.
How are
Yeah.
we going to pay for everything? Like, that's a big conversation in the postpartum plan, is like, do we know what
Expensive, right?
daycare costs? Do we
Yeah.
know what a nanny costs? And can we afford those things?
Yeah.
So yeah.
So do you find, Alex, this doula coaching kind of support system that you provide, what do you find with regards to our medical system when people go into hospitals to have babies or birthing center to have babies? Do you find that the nurses and doctors are very, very receptive of this support that you offer to the patients?
I mean, I'm
Like, do
making
they
their
embrace
job
it?
way easier, right?
That's what I was gonna ask. Like,
Yeah.
are they like, oh God, thank God she's got a doula? Like, is it
So,
like that?
so a midwife, in my experience, they always want you to have a doula. Like, they really push it.
They love that. Yeah.
They love that. They know. Midwives are really magic, so they know. Um, I think from in my experience, I can only talk from my experience, and in like the experience of my colleagues, like, most hospitals, doctors, nurses are happy to have a doula there, especially the nurses, because I'm there for that constant support in the room. Whereas if you don't have a doula, like, the nurse has to play more of that role, and they're not only taking care of you,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
They have
Like
other
other
patients.
women. Yeah.
Yeah. Some hospitals have like an on-staff doula. Like in Montreal, Lakeshore Hospital has one.
Well,
So
that's progression. I mean,
that is,
that is
yes.
progression.
Yeah. I'm not like well versed in how that works and who pays, and I'm not 100% sure on like how, like, the
How it all
structure of
works.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I would love to see is, like, I would love to work with OB clinics, and both from a perspective of like education, so understanding what a doula does, and like especially talking about this whole experience of the neurodivergent
Yeah.
birther. But also, like,
Just in general.
because people are uncomfortable, they don't have a lot of information. Google is overwhelming when you're trying to figure out, like, this feels weird and that feels weird, and is this normal? I do a whole like thing about, is this normal, because I get asked that question all the time. And like, passing along to a doula who's coming to you with evidence-based research versus sending your patients out there to just figure this out on their own. I think there's a benefit to it.
Yeah.
And we know that there is a higher propensity for births to not have, like, not need to go to a C-section, not need surgical intervention when there's a doula in the room. There is like research to back that the doula makes a difference. So I think that there's an opportunity, like, in my like dream fantasy world, I would be working, and all of my colleagues would be working directly with the medical system, so that we're creating a more, holistic care program for people that are trying to grow their families.
Yeah. I wish that for you.
Yeah. No, it's very interesting. It's very interesting.
Yeah, totally.
Progressive comparatively to when I gave birth to Natasha. I had a midwife, but no, there's, and it was a beautiful experience becoming a mother, but there were so many things that were uncomfortable along the process for me that
And
were
then you're just like
incredibly
sent home alone.
yeah. And just the part that you said before, which stuck with me, is like, who takes care of the birther
Yeah.
after birth, and who takes care of the partner after birth, right?
Yeah, 'cause that's
We didn't
the
even
birth, we
talk
can't do it.
that wasn't even part of vocabulary in those days. It was just like, you gave birth, it's normal. Get back up on your feet, and you're expected to just be, and
Yeah.
to fall into this position that is, it's life changing to become a
Yeah.
parent, to
Yeah.
birth a child.
You
So
know,
yeah, it's good. It's really good, I think.
we have a job to do when someone has a baby, and that job falls on extended family, grandparents, best friends. Like, we have a job to do to support this family system, and it doesn't just look like coming and like bringing a gift for the baby. It looks like, caring for these two parents who are, or multiple, however, caregiving team, who are new to this job and this role. But also, I mean, if you've just given birth, think about the size of your placenta. That's the size of the wound that's inside your body. This is not like, we're not playing games when we talk about recovery. If you've had a C-section, I mean, you can see videos of what a C-section looks like and how many layers of body they're going through. It's a massive surgery.
Very
And
painful, very painful.
like, the recovery is real. So we
Yeah.
need to take much better care of the
Yeah.
people that give birth and the partners who
Absolutely.
witness it.
Yeah, and
It's
just
real.
for people not to feel like they're alone. I think that's really important.
Yes.
There's community around. They always say in the blue zones, the people that live, the centennials that live to over 100 years old, and there's many different factors, but one of the things is having a community around you. And we are, animals. We need to have that around us.
You're so right.
And to not be alone in it, I think is a very big message for people.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This was very
amazing.
interesting. I always enjoy our conversations.
I know, same.
Yeah, I always learn too, which I really like, because it's, these were things that didn't exist at the time when Natasha was born. So
Yeah.
it's just very promising to know that we are moving, and I'm really excited to know where it's going to go in the next 10, 15, 20, and 30, 50 years down the road. What does it look like for people? And
It's going to look different. I know it's going to look different for my kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Very exciting. Thank you so much.
Thank
you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please take a moment to rate, review, and follow us on social at Skin Talks Pod. We'll see you next week.